Everyone for being here. This is a all right. We're let me hit that. There we are. Um, I want to thank everyone for being here. This is an important lesson we'll have tonight. I just can't think of anything I'm more interested in. And there was something that was alluded to during this chat just before we came on. That is, we're having a Human Rights Day on Saturday at the Sabo restaurant. I guess Muhammad may say more about that later on. And we'll be signing letters and addressing letters and what have you to send to embassies in Washington D.C. and other places. So this is a big day. So if you can possibly make it out, be sure to do it. Also, this is next month. We will gladly take your membership dues, which is $20 for a single and $30 for a family, or $15 for a student. Daniela, you look like a student. So so we'll be glad to take your funds then. So, but yeah, thank you again for showing up, and especially our guests tonight. I'm really looking forward to this. Go ahead, Mohammed.
All right, thank you, Bob. Thank you. And first of all, I want to thank Ms. Gypsy and Ms. Daniela Dwyer to agree to be our speakers today. This is really a very important topic. And just a brief bio of these two wonderful speakers. Ms. Gypsy Shannon Pete, she is the Community Outreach Coordinator for the DNA People's Legal Services. DNA is a nonprofit law firm which provides free legal services to people with low income in New Mexico, Arizona, and on the Navajo and Hopi nations in the Southwest. Ms. Pete works in DNA's main office in Window Rock, Arizona, which is also the capital of the Navajo Nation. She holds 2 Bachelor's of Science degrees from Arizona State University. She also received a Master's of Legal Studies from the University of Oklahoma College of Law. By the way, I'm also a Oklahoma Sooner graduate from 79. She is currently the 2022 first runner-up Miss Navajo Nation, which is a traditional pageant which requires mastery of various cultural and linguistic skills. Originally from Rock Point, Arizona, Ms. Pete is a fluent speaker of the Navajo language and has dedicated herself personally and professionally to educating the public about the Dene people and their culture. Her platform was bringing attention to murdered and missing Indigenous women, men, and children. Ms. Pete was also the official 2012 to 2013 Miss Teen Navajo. She lives on the Navajo reservation and enjoys running and hiking. Now, Miss Daniela Dwyer, which we have known for several years, a good friend of Bob, is the litigation director of DNA People's Legal Services. Originally from El Paso, Texas, Ms. Dwyer is a Mexican-American attorney who has been practicing public interest law for 18 years. She recently joined the DNA staff in October of this year. Previously, she was the director of Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid's Migrant and Seasonal Farm Workers Division. So please join me in welcoming both Gypsy and Daniela to our Amnesty International December meeting. So Ms. Pete, go ahead and start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. I am going to begin our screen share right now. Okay, but before we begin, I would like to introduce myself in the Navajo language. So, yaat I Arnold Soshik Ado Shadina, Shaken Platini Nishle, Dash Tini Bashashin, Bitahni Dashache, Maidash Gishni, A Dashanella, She Gypsy Shannon Pete Unachia, Nalay Sansades, Ahawid Yehide, Ade, Ayiside Nash Shak at Aya, Equa Sale, what Zanade, with Yehide, A Shalan Dosha Naznish. Shadan Nishigi, Aya, DNA People's Legal Services, the Nehbe in Nahil Nahu, the Agadit Ahi. She did the Nehbe, but just so in translation, I am greeting you. Good evening to you all this evening. Thank you all so much for attending this presentation. I am in translation again. I am of the Red House clan, born first start of the Red Street clan. My maternal grandfathers are of the Folded Arms People clan, and my paternal grandfathers are of the Coyote Pass clan. So Navajos, and it's one way we like to greet each other through kinship and relating our parents, our mother and our father, and our maternal grandparents and our paternal grandparents as well. My name is Gypsy Shannon Pete. I originally come from a small town in northern Arizona, about 30 miles located from the Four Corners, which is a small town known as Rock Point, Arizona. But I currently make my home in the capital of the Navajo Nation, which is Winter Rock, Arizona. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator for DNA People's Legal Services, and I've been with DNA since mid-2019. And so to begin our presentation, I want to provide just our mission statement. And our mission statement here is DNA provides access to justice across those who are low income and vulnerable by providing high quality legal services and education while respecting our tribal sovereignty and cultural traditions. This mission statement is really unique to any of our legal aids in particular across the United States, because with DNA in itself, we have to ensure the cultural sensitivity, but also respecting across the three different Native American practices or Native American reservations that we do serve. So DNA is a nonprofit organization that began in 1967. And since then, we've accomplished many great different cases that have made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. So we're very proud of those accomplishments and that we're still growing. And with that growth, which has included that our offices have expanded to 6 different offices across the Navajo Nation reservation. And in the bottom here in the middle is the DNA is actually an acronym for the Navajo name is the Nahilna Ahi. So which means that attorneys who work for the economic revitalization of the people. In our next slide, so this next slide here is a animated illustration of which is the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation currently sits #1 among the federally recognized tribes across the United States. So we sit #1 in population. As far as the expansion of the Navajo Nation, I believe is about 3 sizes. If you could put 3 for the great state of Vermont, put them together 3 times, and that's the size of the Navajo Nation. But I know it's not as big as the state of Texas. And the signs here, as you can see across the Navajo Nation reservation, it's pretty much an outline of the little Colorado River leading out to Page, Arizona, and leading into the Grand Canyon. So the Navajo Nation on this map that you see here, you will find 6 dots. And these dots represent where our offices are located. And the office here at the very bottom, the center to the bottom is our Winter Rock office, which is the office I'm in right now, and where Daniela and I are hosts, where a majority of our administration and our Port Defiance staff and support staff and our attorneys are housed. And most offices at minimum are about 1 hour apart from one another. The furthest is 3 hours from us in Flagstaff, Arizona. So I'll go to the next slide. So our offices consist of 6 different offices, which we are very grateful and extremely happy that we have 6 offices and are currently looking to expand more into the western and the northern part of the Navajo Nation reservation. So the reservation on Navajo, we have 3 offices. On the Hopi Reservation, we have one office. We have one office located off of the reservation, which is our Flagstaff office, and we have one office located in New Mexico. And I will go back one slide to explain more about the map as far as where the Hopi Reservation is. There is a slight light coloration here, which is the Hopi Reservation. So the Hopi Reservation is located within the Navajo Nation. And we do have one more Native American nation, which is the Hickory Apache Nation, which is located in New Mexico, near and surrounding the areas of Dulce, New Mexico. So going back to our offices, again, we are starting with our main hub office, the Window Rock and the Fort Defiance office. The image on the left is what our current office looks like, and it's in the shape of a hogan. The shape of a hogan has 8 sides, representing the 9 months that a female is pregnant with a child, giving birth to a child, but it's also a representation of a female home. And for the Navajo people, a hogan is a representation of health and strength. So it was very important that when building DNA, that we would find that one of our main offices would be in the shape of a hogan. And on the right, you see here is a picture of a historic landmark, which is located about 5-minute drive north from our office, which is the Window Rock Monument. And in front of the monument is the Navajo Nation Veterans Memorial Park. So at each office, there are significant landmarks and different ties that are along the office or near the office, and which gives a very sense of warmth and helps knowing that a lot of our clients, they do not very familiar about where to go, but once we mention historical landmarks, it's okay, I know where I'm going. The second office we have here is the Chinle office, and in Navajo, the word for Chinle is Chinle, so where the trees are along the river. So on the left here, we have our Chinle office, which is in the shape of a trailer, I believe a double-wide trailer. And on the right, we have the historic landmark of Canyon de Chelly. And fun fact is you can actually hike down the canyon and have lunch out there. I've done it multiple times with my family. Where I'm originally from in Rock Point, this monument, I believe, is about an hour away from where I make my original home. This next office here is the Tuba City office, and Navajo is Twidnanes, so where the twirling water is. And that's really a representation to the Grand Canyon. So on the right of the slide is our current office in Tuba City, Arizona. And on the left is the National Park, the Grand Canyon. And I believe that's about an hour and a half entering from the east side of the Grand Canyon. The next office we have, which is located within the reservation as well, but its own reservation, is the Hopi office, as well as our Hopi Public Defender office. And you will see another trailer on the right side, which is where our Hopi staff are housed, and as well on the left side is the Second Mesa Village. There are multiple villages in Hopi Reservation that our Hopi office does serve, but there is only one office among the reservation. And our next office, which is our off-Navajo office, is the Flagstaff office, which in Navajo is Kintlana. And on the right, you will see a picture of our current office. And on the left is a picture of a smaller version of the Doko Aslid, which is San Francisco Peak. Our next slide is the Farmington office, which is located in Farmington, New Mexico. And that's the photo on the right side. And on the left is our Shiprock Monument. This monument and the Farmington office are about 40 minutes from each other, and this monument itself is another historical place, and a place for medicine and praying and healing. So these images, just to give a background and a bit of illustration of where our clients do come from, is that, again, the Navajo Nation is about 3 times the size of the great state of Vermont. So therefore, that these images here are actually personal images that I enjoy taking of the Navajo Nation, because I personally, just probably being very biased, that I believe the Navajo Nation is very beautiful. It is very historic, and to continue the preservation of the land itself, the push for development is at a pause, because trying to not disrupt our growth of natural resources and as well as our livestock. So a lot of the roads on the Navajo Nation, anything that is not the highway road is a non-paved road. And the farthest photo on the left is actually part of 264 coming out of New Mexico. And this is during the winter time. So it gets very, very cold here during the winter time, but it's very beautiful. And during the wintertime here at DNA, we try to limit our outreach opportunities because of roads, as is that this road may be clear, but for a client who lives a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 18 miles off the road, will take them approximately 1 hour to reach the main road. And the photo at the bottom next to it is the atop at Pyramid Rock, right outside of Gallup, New Mexico. And I don't think you can really tell, but there is a long stretch of I-40 that goes through the photo. And again, this is just another representation of how far some of our clients have to drive just to get to the main road. And the photo at the top right is actually a photo right outside of where I make my home in Rock Point. My home is located on top of a mesa. So as you can see, on the image here, we have which also known as goats. And these goats are being raised by my grandparents, and my sisters, my brothers, and my cousins. We like to joke that we have each of a grandchild we give to them, and they help take care of them. And during the weekends, a lot of the times they like to climb the rocks, and we like to sheep herd after them throughout the day. And it's just a great daytime passer and a great exercise. And at the bottom photo on the right is a second modern version of a hogan. So this hogan specifically is the hogan that's located on my family's plot. And this plot, this hogan is the same hogan that my mother was raised in from birth until she went off to college, as well as all of my other aunts and uncles. This is the same hogan that my family was very proud to conduct my coming of age ceremony. So a hogan is used for multi-purposes, and one of those is for living and for spiritual healing and spiritual practices. And to move on to our Navajo Nation government. Our Navajo Nation government is, I like to think, is a mimic of the United States government. Just as our United States government has a president and a vice president, we on the Navajo Nation have a Navajo Nation president and a Navajo Nation vice president. And the image here on the left, the gentleman on the left side is Honorable President Jonathan Nez, along with his wife, First Lady Cecilia Nez. And on the right is Honorable Myron Lizer, along with his wife, Dottie Lizer. And they will be in office until January 10th, 2023 of next year, where a new administration will come in and serve for the next 4 years. And if you can see, there is a wooden carving of a seal in the back, and the right is a more detailed colored version of the seal. And I just like to explain a little bit more about what that seal means, because I believe it's a representation of both modern and traditional worlds. So there are, as you see, when you see the seal here, there are 50 arrows. If you all would like to count that as 50 arrows located at the top, around the seal, and that actually represents the 50 states that are within the United States of America. And inside of the arrows are I'm quickly, briefly looking at my notes here, is the rainbow representing sovereignty within the people, but also representing peace and welcome, being that the top is, if you look at the photo here, it's seen as the north, but it's supposed to represent the east. And underneath, you'll see the great seal of the Navajo Nation. Underneath that, you see the sun, which in Navajo is Johana'e. And since the sun rises from the east, that there are 4 sacred mountains, that the sun rises from the east, but also goes to sleep in the west. And in the middle, you'll see the 4 sacred mountains. And the 4 sacred mountains are Sisnajin, Sotzis, Doko Aslid, the Bensa. And in translation, those mountains are the Blanca Peak, Mount Taylor, the San Francisco Peak, and Humphreys Mountain. So within these mountains, we consider the Navajo people, we consider our mountains to be sacred because they hold spiritual rocks and spiritual healings, and each mountain has its own song as well as a chant. So with the expansion of the Navajo Nation, there is this push to not develop near the mountain because the mountain is, I would say, is a safe haven for the Navajo people, but it's also a safe haven for the Hopi people as well. And inside of these 4 directional mountains, you see 3 images of livestock, also known as Nagyonshis, which are, the top is a horse, which is in Navajo is Xini. In the middle, we have cows, which is Bekashi. And at the bottom is a photo of a sheep, which is Kizip. So all 3 of these animals are very specific and cherished by the Navajo people, because not only do we use horses for riding, but we also use them for trade goods. And in the spirit of the awakening of COVID-19, horse meat and horse hide was used very often to help with healing and protection against COVID-19. And the next animal we have is the cow, which is predominantly used for trade, ensuring that to growing wealth within a family. And the next animal we have is the sheep. The sheep, I would say, is probably the most dominant animal that is protected and used by the Navajo people, because the sheep is a source of food. It's a source of yarn, and also trade and use for blanket and warmth. And underneath the mountains, you will see 2 corn stalks. These corn stalks represent empowerment, healing, and also prayer. And during the time, during the late summer, when our crops are freshly grown, early fall, that these corn stalks, family members tend to gather together to dust off corn pollen. And therefore, the corn pollen is then used for traditional healing and protection. Okay, and the next slide is a little bit about the Navajo Long Walk, also known in Navajo as Huelde. So many of the Native American reservations, I'm not specifically sure on the amount of numbers who still have an active treaty, but in the state of Arizona, with the 22 federally recognized tribes in the state of Arizona, the Navajo Nation is the only tribe that still has an active treaty to this day. And that treaty was signed on June 1st of 1868. So in 1864, our Navajo people were forced out of the Navajo reservation and led to Fort Sumner, where they were held captive for 4 years with little to no water, food, shelter, or clothing and such. So they had to make do with what was in the area and having to grow beans on their own, learning how to grow potatoes and how to grow corn. Until on June 1st of 1868, the first 29 of our Daniela leaders came together and agreed with the federal government that we will allow our people to return home under 13 article conditions. And these 13 articles included the establishment and the allowance for us to return home to the Navajo Nation, but also to ensure that they will introduce education, that they will introduce church, and they will help with livestock, specifically sheep and cows. But also they will teach more about trade and using modernized materials and building clothing. So at the bottom of the word here is naltosene, meaning the first old paper. And I wish I could show a very brief version of naltosene, but due to its historical preservations, that the document itself was recently discovered, I believe in the last 10 years. There are only 3 copies. And the Navajo people were very fortunate that a family outside of New Mexico were able to find the original document sitting in a treasure trunk in their attic. And they thought, I'm going to give this back to the Navajo people. Without no pages, this seems what was missing. And that day for the Navajo people was very historic, but it also was a remembrance of what happened at the time, because the Navajo people were taken from their home, had to leave whatever they couldn't carry on their back or what couldn't their animal carry, and they had lost a lot of what they thought was their identity. But finding Naltosene really gave the harmony and also the happiness and the strength, knowing that this paper, this treaty to us is a symbolism of our sovereignty and of our strength. And I'm going to move on a little bit to our Navajo law structure. So as I've mentioned earlier, that the law structure is the Navajo Nation government is a mimic of the United States government. And with that mimic also includes the representation of our amendments. And just like the amendments, the Navajo Nation has what is called the Navajo Nation Code. The Navajo Nation Code consists of 26 titles, and this particular structure can be found in Title I of Navajo Nation Code. So I'm going to give a little bit description about what each of the laws that we do have, and I find it very unique that each of these laws include the preservation of our songs, our teaching, our prayers, but it also includes our land and our homes and our language and what historical beings and what historical landmarks have happened or what has taken place on Navajo. It's all feel that it's represented in this law structure. So to begin the structure, at the very top, we have people. So in Navajo, we are people, we are one. And from our Dene people, we have leaders. Our Dene are not Anis. So with that a lot of our people, they may not see themselves as leaders. Of what I've discovered in with working with DNA People's Legal Services is that lack of belief of that they can be a leader, but reassuring that who they are and that the changes that they will make in life is that they may not be seen a leader on a larger scale, but they are a leader within their own home. And with these Denenat Anis create Ben Nahas Ani, which are laws. And these 4 different laws we have here, and again, 4 is considered a sacred number. I like to think a sacred number for the Navajo people. And to begin, the first law that we have is Diyen Batade Behazani. This is the Dene traditional law. And the Dene traditional law declares and teaches the representation of our 3 fundamental structures of law, or 3 branches, which is the executive branch, legislative branch, and the judicial branch, just like the United States government. But the traditional law also recognizes the rights of our medicine women, our medicine men, allowing the teaching of our traditional songs and our traditional prayers. A lot of our prayers and our stories and our songs are not recommended to be written down in a book or to be printed on any sort, because we see that as a sacred connection and an opportunity to verbally communicate with the next generation. Therefore, a lot of our teachings and our songs are oral. And as an example of the traditional law is the Navajo Nation election that took place this past year, actually this past November. So with that, we are allowing the Navajo people to select a leader amongst themselves, to select a Navajo man, to select a Navajo woman. And it's actually very exciting that in recent last month that the Navajo Nation has selected their first female woman leader, which will be is Rochelle Montoya. She will be the next Navajo Nation president, or Navajo Nation vice president. And the next one we have is our Navajo customary law, which is again, which is the Diné customary law. The Diné customary law recognizes and declares the rights and the freedom of holistic teaching, but also the recognition of who we are as Diné people. And these educational teachings allows our Navajo people to learn the Navajo language, because at one time the Navajo language was forbidden when my grandparents were not allowed to speak the Navajo language, yet alone to teach their children. But today, across Navajo Nation, all of our schools require our children to learn the Navajo language. And even if it's just the basics of who they are, their names, their parents, their grandparents, their siblings, but it's that acknowledgement of passing down of who we are as Diné people. And this also, again, recognizes the rights and declares the teaching of the Navajo language. And one requirement in the teachings of our language is the recognizing and the respect that we give to our Navajo code talkers. So in the beginning, during World War II, there were the original 29 code talkers that volunteered themselves to go to Camp Pendleton and created the encrypted Navajo Nation or Navajo code, which helped win World War II. And this code since then was greatly not wanted to be put out to public, because again, they thought it might have been wanting to be used and such, but the Navajo code talkers themselves and the organization agreed that they would share that information with the people, understanding that these code words that they had used are the same words that are used in every life. Okay, and then the third law we have is Nahasan do Yadishkish Batande Ben Nahasani, which is the Diné natural law. The literal translation of Nahasan do Yadishkish Batande, which is Nahasan is Mother Earth, do Yadishkish is Father Sky. So that's the representation of everything in between the sky and the earth. And this includes our 4 sacred elements: air, water, light, fire, earth, and pollen. But this also, again, includes our 6 sacred mountains, which were also in the previous slides, which is seen on the Navajo Nation seal. And the natural law, the Diné natural law, also protects our unlimited amount of natural resources. And with that, being why our Navajo people really push against the development on Navajo to prevent the use of the taking out of the natural resources, but then again, taking away from its beauty of the Navajo Nation itself. The 4th and final law we have is the Diné common law, is the Nohokat Diné Hazani. This declares the rights and teaches that the Navajo language be recognized, respected, honored, and trusted as a motivational guidance. But it also represents the preservation of our spiritual being and using our traditional medicine and herbs in everyday life and during ceremonial purposes, and that it should not be frowned upon, but seen as another way of protection. And a lot of our people we have several Indian hospitals here, but also a lot of our hospitals do include natural and spiritual healing. So with the Diné customary law, that really push and protects the right for our people to choose whether they want a traditional healer to help them, or as well as modern day medicine. And the next slide we have here, Daniela, would you like to give a little bit explanation about this?
Sure, I know we're running short on time, but I wanted to give you all a sense of how we as legal advocates assist the Navajo population, the Hopi population, the Hickoria Apache population, and how their needs vary from other jurisdictions. So for example, in any given legal aid program, you would have consumer related cases that have to do with, bankruptcy or unfair debt collection. You would have employment related cases, unemployment cases. Family law, of course, is the #1 legal need across the country. And there are, access to public benefits cases, but because of the nature of the population that we serve, we have certain amounts of cases that are greater than others, and they have a particular focus or flavor to them. So for example, we do quite a lot of consumer cases, and in part that's because there are a lot of people from off the reservation, like in New Mexico, Arizona, or in Utah, that engage in unfair lending practices and really take advantage of the Native population, especially when they're not English speaking. And so we've dealt with some cases that have to do with the unfair debt collection practices, where they over-declare people's income to qualify them for vehicles, knowing that the person will end up getting their vehicle repossessed, so that they can get the benefit of the payments that they're able to make for as long as they're able to make them, then repossess the vehicle, and then do a yo-yo sale and turn that around again. And the Navajo Nation has become very cognizant of the predatory nature of a lot of lending. There's also a lot of, payday loan cases or pawn shop cases that we deal with, and have engaged in a lot of consumer protections under Navajo law, but which many of these American businesses don't respect or adhere to. So that's an interesting flavor for consumer cases. Likewise, employment is very, very limited on the Navajo Nation, and they have their own particular affirmative action protections, where people who are members of the Navajo tribe should be hired first. They have a lot of employee-friendly protections, which I think is a good thing. But it also means that we don't have as many employment-related cases, because there's not as much employment available. But as a result, it also means that there are a lot of family law cases that we deal with that have a different nature. So you'll see, for example, that we handle lots of cases dealing with divorces or separations or annulments or domestic abuse. And a lot of that has to do, I think, with the fracturing of family because of very difficult employment situations. Also, unfortunately, there are a lot of dependency issues, drug dependency or alcohol dependency issues that happen on the reservation, or as Ruby mentioned earlier, a lot of people who are missing or murdered, which of course takes its toll on, children and their extended families as well. So we handle quite a lot of guardianship cases as well. Guardianship over children whose parents are no longer able to care for them for various reasons. And then another interesting thing about our practice area is typically landlord, tenant, and housing cases are very high volume in most legal aid organizations, but on the Navajo Nation, all of the land is held by the tribe. And so one typically does not have a landlord. It's a home that you yourself are building, or people in your family have helped to build. And so we don't have as many landlord-tenant cases. Most of the landlord-tenant cases are off reservation, like in the Farmington area or in the Flagstaff area. And instead we have more of other kinds of cases, like I was saying, powers of attorney or wills and estates. And I think especially during the COVID epidemic, we had quite a number of people who are interested in getting wills taken care of, or guardianships, or medical powers of attorney, because unfortunately, the Navajo Nation was one of the hardest hit across the country by this. So I don't know how many attorneys we have in the audience, but I always find this very interesting, because people ask, how does this particular organization's work differ from other legal aid organizations? And there's a lot of similarity here, but due to the nature of the clients that we serve, there are very particular issues that tend to come up a lot more frequently. So I know we're running out of time, but I think you have maybe 2 or 3 minutes left, Ruby.
Okay.
Sorry, Gypsy, sorry.
Okay. Okay, just to quickly wrap up, adjusting to the new life. So in the wake of the COVID pandemic, and Navajo is the Kosinskagi, so the big cough is what is translated into Navajo. And to help with that, DNA People's Legal Services really had to figure out new ways to reach client clientele. And again, due to the unpaved roads and to the other obstacles and challenges that our clients may have faced, we have come up a way to reach our clients. And one of those great ways is our DNA has purchased a travel trailer, which has been taken out to several local chapter houses. And when we tell our clients that on the radio or on the newspaper that we're going to be at this chapter house, it's a sense of, okay, they're going to come to me. And a lot of the times, our clients who do come in, it's not just them alone. It's usually, it's the mother, it's the father, it's the daughter, it's the grandparents, because a lot of our Navajo people are housed in multi-generational homes. So therefore, one legal issue, you may see it as one person applying, but it's their entire family, because it affects all of them living either in that one home or whatever that legal issue may be. And another obstacle that DNA does face is the language barrier. A lot of our clients, the English language is not their first language. So therefore, it is important that a lot of our staff do speak either in the Navajo language, the Hopi language, the Jicarilla language, as well as the Spanish language, to accommodate for just the protection and the safety and the trust that we want to build with our clientele. Personally, last week, I got to meet a client, and the first thing she asked me was, meaning, do you speak and do you understand Navajo? And in the Navajo, I said to her, oh, meaning, yes, I do speak and I learn. And you can tell by a smile from somebody on the phone, and that they will give you their entire life story, but to tell you what their legal need is. But there's that sense of trust that we're building with our clients. And I think that any legal aid, the first thing you want to do is to build trust with your clients. And that is one of our main priorities here at DNA, is to build trust, but also to build that safe, bridge of comfort and protection, and the willingness that we at DNA are willing to help you. But DNA itself is a great place to work. It's very diverse, and we are continuously growing and will continue to grow. And again, this is our contact information, myself and Daniela's contact information. You'll see a link here at www.DNA Legal Services, which will take you to our website, has our more contact information about our individual offices, employment options, and also about how to volunteer here at DNA. But we also do have an Instagram, Twitter, and a Facebook account, so you're able to reach us across on social media. And the number at the bottom here is our centralized intake unit, which you can call if our clients have a legal issue but do not have strong internet connection, but do have a strong phone connection. Therefore, they can call and seek services via telephone. But that is my presentation. Just again, Nana Ahihet, Don Tragoshin, the Shananashiki Yastkiago. So Halishin Batan dent article she the Spechozenti, the Nebazariki, Ahi, the Nato, the Nagi, Yastkit the Doles, Adoshinti, Net on Higi, a Betir that. So again, in translation, Thank you so much for allowing me to present to you all today. And I hope you all learned a little bit about the Navajo people and how strong the Navajo people are, as well as the Hopi and the Hickory Apache people. And that DNA, again, we're going to continue to grow and continue to help the Navajo people. Again, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Gypsy, and thank you, Daniela, for this wonderful presentation. I mean, there's so much information here. It's really amazing. I mean, and I was really impressed by how fluently you speak the Navajo language. It's really amazing. So whoever has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask the question, and then mute yourself back.
John raised his hand first.
Back
Okay, thank
us
you,
better
Rick.
so we can see each
Okay,
other.
John, go ahead.
Yeah. My question is, I assume from the presentation that most of the legal issues are managed within the US legal system. Is there a legal system within the Navajo Nation that handles issues that really are don't go beyond the nation, or just within nation issues, or does everything from DNA get handled in the US legal system?
I think I can field that one. I've been on the job about 2.5 months, but I think I can field that one. Actually, the majority of the cases that we take are within the Navajo Nation or within the Hopi Nation. And so, as Gypsy described on the PowerPoint, they have their own bodies of law, which are relatively new as far as being codified, but are entirely self-sufficient. For people who live off reservation, so for people who live, say, in San Juan County, in the Farmington, New Mexico area, or in the area of Flagstaff, there could be a mix, and that depends on whether or not people are enrolled with the tribe, so the tribe would have jurisdiction over them, or whether they have decided to initiate a suit in state court. But one of the things that I found so interesting when I first started at DNA was I attended a case staffing meeting, and the discussion of one family law case took probably 20 minutes, because the whole first 20 minutes had to do with a mother who was a member of the Navajo Nation who had children with someone who was a member of another tribe, and the children had been enrolled with the other tribe, and then the mother had unfortunately gone missing. The father was incarcerated in the state of Arizona, and our prospective clients were the grandparents of the mother, who wanted the Navajo Nation to take jurisdiction of the children to give them a guardianship. And before you could even figure out whether the grandparents had that authority to do that in the Navajo court system, we had to deal with, where are the parents? What member of what tribe are they involved with? Has an action already been started? Because there are some people that will, start an action in one place and then move or try and forum shop. And so the jurisdictional issues are very, very complicated and really interesting. The other thing that is very interesting is in the Navajo Nation, if you are Native, you can sit for the bar exam without having gone to law school. And for many years, DNA had a program to mentor people that were Native to help them pass the bar exam. That's one of the many things I think that we'd like to revisit. But I'd say we're a very small organization. We're probably about between 55 and 60 people, and about 35 of those are advocates. And I'd say about 20 of those advocates are what they say not law trained, but really what that means is they've not gone to an American law school. They're way more law trained in Native law than I am. And so a lot of our advocates are people who themselves are Navajo and are Navajo advocates, and they practice within the Navajo court system.
Thanks. And so I assume that there within the Navajo system, there is a court structure, there's an enforcement structure, and everything else like that.
Yes, yes. And if you give me until the end of March, when I have to sit myself for the Navajo bar, I'll be able to elaborate more. But yes, absolutely.
Hey,
Thanks.
Robert has his hand raised. So Robert, unmute and ask your question.
Yes, thank you for presenting. How far has it gotten with where tribal courts within the Navajo Nation and other tribal areas can try non-tribal members to commit crimes within tribal land? Because I think currently that they can't do that. If an outsider comes in and commits a crime within the reservation, they're tried within their state court, but not the tribal courts.
Go ahead, Gypsy.
Just to answer your question, a lot again, as Daniela mentioned, a lot of it is jurisdictional issues. So, for example, if it's Indian versus Indian, we'll see it in tribal court. But if it is Indian versus non-Indian, it does go out to state court, but also can be helped with a tribal court advocate. But primarily, a lot of the Indian versus non-Indian cases are actually seen by not only DNA attorneys, but they are also tribally licensed, but as well as state licensed. So therefore, they're able to practice outside of the Navajo Nation lines.
But all of those permutations about who can be charged well, especially on the criminal side of things, is obviously very complicated. And so, for example, there's also a practical difference between the resources of, say, the Navajo Nation and the Hopi Nation. We serve as the public defender for the Hopi Nation, as well as doing the civil legal aid. And I've heard that because the Hopi Nation has many fewer resources than the Navajo Nation, even if some people could be charged with a criminal offense on the Hopi Nation, especially if they're not a member of that tribe, the preference is to not charge them because there aren't always resources that are available for that, but with the understanding that if they were to ever come back, that would be, a more serious prosecution. And so, the first question has to do with jurisdiction, who could be sued where and by whom, but the other are also, comes down to the practicalities of resources and what people actually choose to charge or not charge.
Thank you. Who's next? Bob?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One is real quick. And that is, I see how large the territory is, but what kind of population is it within the Navajo boundary? And also, I heard recently that there's a court case before the Supreme Court that may result in a lot of the Native Americans losing a lot of the rights that they have been given over the years. Could you address that?
You're talking about the ICWA Supreme Court case that is going on. Okay, yeah, so that itself, from my understanding, is that the child is actually half Navajo. And being that it's, again, it also has to go back to where the child is registered. So it's depending on if the child is, although they are blood, they are half Navajo, but although I believe they are not registered within Navajo. So as far as being primarily really involved is very limited on Navajo because we do not have the rights to the child legally because they're not a member of the tribe. But there's still that representation that they are Navajo, and we would want to seek a Navajo child within a Navajo home. And as far as the population, I believe it's in the early 100,000s. And due to the pandemic, the COVID-19 virus really took a hit on Navajo. It seemed, what I think it seems like it just crossed over Navajo Nation overnight. And that number of deaths related to COVID is now sitting in the thousands. And for a lot of our people, just again, due to the fact that with the limited amount of resources and medical supplies that are on Navajo, resulted in those deaths because it takes time to get to a hospital, as we're in an urban area, it's every few blocks. And with that, there wasn't the need for our Navajo people to say, like, we are here, we want to be accounted for. And during 2020, during the census count, a lot of the Navajo people didn't really see the need to want to be counted. And like, you're counting yourself to a greater population with the government, with seeing our numbers. We want to see our numbers grow. But when there was a need for the Navajo people to seek medical supplies, to seek hand sanitizer, disinfectants, and to get more supplies sent to the hospitals, it was, okay, I want to be counted. And with the election that just previously happened, it was, I want my voice heard. How does this work? What do I do? And I feel that it's very saddening to say that this pandemic really shed some light to the fact of the realization of being counted, having your vote go in, and to see that numbers matter. And that's why when they, during the census, like, why is the population increasing so fast? And it was, oh, the birth rate is so high. And it's like, no, just a lot of people weren't accounting for themselves. But again, when it became personal to them and to staying healthy, to staying active, it was, okay, I need to do something. And that's when that need of the numbers changing. So I know the population count, and as far as like the census count on Navajo, are drastically different. And it's because, again, they didn't see the need on a national scale, but tribally it was, okay, I matter. The nation's gonna help take care of me. And to this day, like the coronavirus and all the other million of variants that are going around now, is that a lot of our hospitals are having 24-hour COVID swabbing, different flu vaccination stuff are going around, but it's that need of, okay, it's happening to us. And I want to say that for a lot of the Navajo people, that was where the realization kicked in.
Yeah, Roger, you had a question.
She answered my question when she was
Oh.
talking about the voting. That's why I brought my hand down, because I was wondering about the voting in the Navajo Nation population. You know, how they try to deny individuals the right to vote in the 50 states, and I was just wondering how it was within the Navajo Nation. So she answered it.
Yeah, the voting issue in Montana made big national news in 2020, I think. Yeah, that was major news. And I think because of those voter suppression issues there, we ended up losing a senator out of Montana.
One centralized, was it post office box or something like that? It was in Montana.
Yeah, because they didn't have any street addresses, and the voter ID requirement was a street address. They disenfranchised literally thousands of indigenous people from voting.
It's the same way here on the Navajo Nation, where I originally make my home in Rock Point. It is an unmarked road. So when on a lot of our clients, when they do come in their driver's license, they do have the post office box. But if we try to use that, outside of reservation lines, it becomes an issue. And even just simple mailing, to have something mailed to our post office, a lot of places they don't allow it because it's a post office box. But there's that, what I think should be more of education, that we don't have that. And we don't have the resources to go out and mark every road. I mean, if I could name my road, it'd be Gypsy Pete Road, if anything. But the clientele to really push in for voting on Navajo, it's more, a lot of our community members, a lot of the Navajo people tend to vote more in the tribal voting rather than the state voting. And with that, like with my family members and community members of Rock Point, I've asked, like, did you research about the new laws that they're trying to make as far as using new identification cards, and also including a lieutenant governor as part of the United States government, or the Arizona state government? And a lot of the people said, I don't know anything about that. I voted for the Navajo Nation president. I voted for my delegate. I voted for these people to be sitting on school board. And that's all that they knew. And they said that's all that really matters. But that lack of where we need to build a bridge of information and informing our people of what happens at state also matters, because that also will happen on Navajo. And I think a lot of people don't really see that distinction between, although it's tribal and state and then there's federal, it all intertwines and it all matters, that that it's all one thing, and that one way or another everything will affect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just to quickly fill in reference to Bob's question, the Supreme Court case that was recently heard in November is called Bracken versus Holland, Haaland. I put the title in the chat. And the issue there was about the Indian Child Welfare Act, which gives preference to people who would like to adopt children who themselves are native children who themselves are native. And the people who were challenging the law were an American Caucasian couple from the Dallas area, and arguing that that was unlawful discrimination. And so the Supreme Court up on the website has the oral argument if you'd like to listen to it. But I'd also recommend this podcast, which other people recommended to me, and then I had a chance to listen to in my long drives back and forth from South Texas all the way out to Window Rock. And it's called This Land. And the whole section, the whole second season of this podcast, This Land, is about this Indian Child Welfare Act case. And so they really outline how this case that was brought before the court is part of an overall strategy by a number of conservatives across the country to challenge racial preference statutes. But it's also very business and money oriented, because a lot of the people who are funding this litigation or bringing these test cases are people who would like to challenge the preference that the US government has given to native tribes to operate casinos, because they're proponents of gambling and gaming. And that's really what's driving this. And so it was very interesting, I think, when I listened to the oral argument, to hear the different justices ask their questions about different perspectives, especially because, now we have an almost entirely different Supreme Court. And some people, including, Justice Barrett, who herself has adopted many times. And so the definition of what's considered family came up a lot. What about the family that's been established by this child who's been in the care of the American family for a while, and then how the traditional definition of family, which is much more than, singular mother, singular father, as Gypsy said when she was introducing herself, is interpreted. So I found that very interesting and timely.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay. I'm sorry we are running out of time here, but this is such a educational presentation, and I will share with all the members of our chapter and all the guests. I will share the chart that Gypsy and Daniela sent us. The last slide has their email addresses. If you have any questions, just send them an email. Hopefully it will be okay, right, Gypsy and Daniela?
Of course.
Yeah, and I would love for you guys to come back in a few months and add more. Maybe we can do a special with a 90-minute show or something, that you guys have more time to do this thing. But this
Well,
was
we can
really,
have
really
Daniela
amazing.
when she passes her Navajo bar exam.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. And so I have one quick announcement. This Saturday, which is the Human Rights Day, December 10th, like Bob said, we are going to have a luncheon where everybody is invited. Susan, you can buy a ticket and come down here. Susan is out of Ohio, but she's a regular attendee here. But we will have at least 10 or 12 letters to be signed, and we will the chapter will take care of the postage to mail these to local embassies or local elected officials, wherever they need to go. These are all coming, and I think Julie, who is the leader of the sister chapter in Houston, she's going to be bringing us a lot of the letters that we will share on Saturday and sign. So, and the next meeting falls on the 2nd of January, and we have not decided whether we should have the meeting on the 2nd or the following Monday, which is the 9th, because the 2nd, I mean, the day after New Year's may be a little too much for everybody to come to the meeting. So we have not decided, but the board will decide soon when the meeting is and who the speakers are. Okay, so Bob, do you want to add anything? Oh yeah, there we go. So we
You
have
always
this,
forget me.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. So we
So,
we always have this withdrawing
yeah.
for a gift card from an independent bookstore here in Houston, Brazos
So
Bookstore.
so last week he said good night. I said, wait a second, hold on. All right, I'm putting this above my head and I'm just going to
There
pull
we
one
go.
out. So let me put my glasses on it. Oh my gosh, Leslie Murphy, are you there? Is
Okay,
Leslie
Leslie.
there?
So Leslie, I will call the Brazos Bookstore tomorrow
There
and
she is.
tell them that you are the winner. And
Yeah,
so
there she is. She's right there. Leslie, can you hear me?
Yes,
All right, you won.
I heard that.
Oh, okay. I kept asking and I didn't hear anything. And I thought,
Oh.
well, all of a sudden she's mute, you know? So,
I was giving you sign language.
oh, okay. I couldn't see you. So I had to switch screens. So there you are.
well,
Nepotism.
everybody have happy holidays, be safe, and we will see you all in January.
All right. Take